Hey everybody, it's Joe. I wanted to just take a few minutes before this next episode to explain to you what's going on with the podcast. You may have noticed that the last couple of weeks I have not dropped anything, and there's a couple of reasons for that. First and foremost, I want to apologize. I am sick currently, and I have been for the last week or so. That obviously has impacted some things as I try to balance that sickness with my other responsibilities, one of those being this podcast. It's still something that's important to me and something that I'm trying to do on a regular basis. I very much enjoy this, and I think that we've got some good content. I know that it's not a ton of content that's out there, but I'm proud of what I've been able to put out. And I think that the conversations that I've had and the quality of the people have been exciting. Things have been going well. And so I want to assure you that I am interested in continuing this. I do hope to have some more people on and some different conversations that will help us to engage with the topic of this season, which is community. And I'm going to do my best to deliver that content to you as quickly as I can. The reason why I'm talking to you right now is because I don't know if that's going to be weekly on a regular basis or not. I'm not trying to change anything. I'm just working within the constraints of my current life situation and trying to acknowledge that to you. One of the things that you know about me is that I work at a university. So classes started at the beginning of September at the university where I work. And my responsibilities for my job took away from some of my spare time that I was using to develop the podcast. In addition to that, my last interview with my friend Randy Hartman, which I think was a very good interview and went very well, had some technical difficulties that I wasn't prepared for. So the development of that episode took a lot more time than I was anticipating, which meant that I didn't have that time to meet with other guests or provide additional content. So I am learning as fast as I can, as well as I can, the demands of this thing, and I just wanted to ask you to be patient with me. I don't currently have somebody that edit the audio and the video for me. I'm doing that all myself. So in addition to some of those technical things and scheduling things that I'm learning, I also started classes myself this semester. I was not taking classes during the summer, which is why I was able to spend so much time developing this and getting it to be what I wanted it to be. But I started doctorate classes that they're very content heavy. There's a lot of reading. There are a lot of papers. And already I have been overwhelmed with the quantity of work for 2 doctorate classes. So this is not your fault, listener, obviously. I've done this to myself, but I just wanted to provide an explanation for why there's a brief hiatus in between episodes. Ultimately, I want to continue to do this. It's valuable to me, and I think that the content is valuable to other people, which, by the way, I'd be happy to hear from you. If you want to email me, you can use the email getbehindmejesus.pod@gmail.com. I'd love to hear your comments, suggestions. If there's somebody that you want to connect me with that you would like to hear, please use that email address and reach out to me. I'm in the process of trying to decide and then figure out the best way to move forward. If something like a Facebook group would be helpful, I don't have a lot of the statistics. I don't know how many of you are out there and either listening to this, and it's not something that I feel compelled to do right away. It is something that I think would be important maybe down the road as connections are made and questions about community and interactions become important. So reach out to me at getbehindmejesus.pod@gmail.com. Please let me know what you think. I would like to put out episodes as frequently as I can, but I recognize and I'm acknowledging to you some of the constraints that are a part of my life right now. I'm pursuing a doctorate of higher education leadership, and actually I see a lot of intersection between the content that I'm studying and the conversations that I want to have with different people, especially in terms of leadership of the church, political leadership, and things like that, especially as we think about world events. And that's the other thing that I wanted to address. In the middle of this hiatus between episodes, a very famous person was murdered in a political act of violence that we are still discussing as a nation, that we are still dealing with the after effects of. And I just want to acknowledge the volatility of the current event and acknowledge also that, that affected whether or not I felt like putting something out. I did feel like it was something that I wanted to respond to and that I needed to have something to say about, but wanted to do so intelligently. So I took some time to think about the things that we will be discussing in this episode. If you follow me on Substack, then you saw some of the thoughts that I shared and the interactions that I've had with some different people over that issue. And I just want to echo some of those things here. We will get into it and do so intelligently, I think, and respectfully. There are some things that I think it's important that we understand about the current situation, and some things that I think are important to consider as we're discussing things like this. As always, I think that the conversation is relevant and important, and I think that you're going to enjoy it. My guest is my friend Darin. We're together again to share our thoughts on this. We speak to each other on a regular basis, and we've had a lot of discussions about the nature of this shooting and the effect that it's had on our friend group, the effect that it's had on individual people that we know and love. And we felt that that was a good primer for the conversation that we had, talking through some of those realities and helping people to navigate that in a way that is meaningful. Community is the theme of this season, and what I want to accomplish with this podcast overall is to help to connect you with a community of people. If you are a deconstructing Christian, if you are a spiritual, not religious person, community is still important for you. I don't think that we ever get out of that paradigm. We are relational people who are meant to be in relationship with one another. And I think it's important that we do so in ways that are wholesome and accommodate and cultivate the space that we need to be able to ask questions, not just of ourselves and of our theology, but to be able to ask questions of each other. Unfortunately, something like this tends to polarize people even more, and there's not a lot of opportunity to address the nuance of the situation. So if you, like me, believe that there is nuance, I think this conversation is going to be something that helps to expand on that and helps to point in a particular direction that I think we ought to go when it comes to the statements or the next steps that need to come after something like this. So I've talked for too long. I just wanted to explain all of that to you. Again, summary is I'm sick. I have a very busy schedule now, and world events. All of those things will impact how I move forward with this podcast, because I want to do so with intentionality, but I also want to do so respectfully and intelligently. So we'll see how things go, but my goal is still to put out as much content as frequently as I can. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you. I'm looking forward to getting connected to various people. I will do my best to get that edited and delivered to you in as timely a manner as I can. So thank you for your patience. More than anything, I'm glad that you're here, and I hope that we can continue to journey together. So let's get into it. This is my conversation with my friend, Darin Gemmer.
Yeah, I was going back and forth with him for a while. We were talking about some theology stuff, and then that kind of tapered off.
And then he became an atheist. Great job, Joey.
ToGemmer again is our
ToGemmer.
that's the title.
That's good. I like this stuff with you. It's fun.
You're welcome. Come on anytime. We'll have a segment where you can just pop in. Maybe that's the theology high five. Is like there's just a segment where you pop in with like just to drop some theology hot take and then high five and peace out.
And then bounce. Yeah. I would have to have more theology going on, I think.
I think you've got enough.
Yeah. Like if it doesn't have a real world application, I'm just bored with it. I mean, we don't have to, this doesn't have to go in the actual episode, but like just what are my frustrations around a particular gathering, just say it that way. And like that, it feels like we're just like, what did I say? I think I described it.
You can say it. I like it. I think it's a valid critique. I think that in a lot of intellectual spaces, it is basically intellectual masturbation.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah. Theological mutual masturbation.
Yeah.
I believe how I put it. But
I get that.
That being from the last 2 years were both excellent, especially 2 years ago, man. Our first time, I loved it. It was fantastic. I'm just getting to the point where like unless all those big words come together into something that actually changes the lives of the people who don't understand the big words, me, I don't understand 2/3 of the words that get said on those stages. And it just starts to feel like this is all well and good, but what do we do with it?
Well, I think from what I'm hearing, like online in recent episodes of various podcasters, I think that question is becoming more prominent. Like last year, there was the subtext behind everything. People were asking, what's next? Where do we go from here? But like, they're still asking that. And it's becoming more urgent. And even like we were talking about Tim Whitaker,
I would drop an actual name. All right.
Yeah. He is, I feel like his question is escalating. The nature of what he's asking, intensity of wanting to move into something new.
Yeah.
As I've heard him speak, I feel like he's just ready for a breakthrough. Like he's just, he's done with the bullshit. I mean, I think he said as much in a few different episodes. So I feel like people are still asking that question, but like it's the fact that they're still asking it, it's becoming more of an insistence. Like we've got to do something now. And especially with the way that things are going in our world right now, like I think it's a crescendo now. We're in the process right now of trying to figure out what to do with church. Like because of therapy, I was encouraged to act on my curiosity. We talked about the things that enliven me and how I was still turned on by theology and thinking through these things and like talking about God and studying God and things like that. But we talked about like my values and how church still can kind of fit into the space where it meets some of those values because of the natural like ability to find community and and some of the other stuff that Christianity has going for it, or at least did. That's part of the conversation we should have is sort of the declining framework or the eroding framework of Christianity and how maybe it doesn't do some of the things that it used to do so well anymore. But there's still a centralized location where people gather and you can find opportunities to build community. And so my therapist encouraged me to go to explore that. And I found a place that checked off all the boxes. I was looking for female leadership. I was looking for queer affirming and queer partnership in the ministries and things like that. I was looking for activist sort of congregation. So I found a place. It sort of ticked all the boxes, but then I get there and it's like 90% boomer and older, and which is fine. I don't have anything against older people. It's really hard to connect. Of course, it was summer when I started going, and so all the families were like us. They're out doing things. They've got activities. They're trying to do summer vacation, stuff like that. So there are more kids. There are more teens. and there are more younger parents, but you still have to look to find them. It's not like the congregation just exploded with people
Yeah.
my age and, kids my kids' age.
We always said too, like if we could just get like 5 or 6 couples, families who could like come and just commit to being there for like 6 months, so that every time some other random family came, they saw that there were enough people there that were like them, that they would maybe stay.
Yeah.
Then we did that. Oh no, man. We've talked at length about Summit,
Yeah.
about our prior church and just how like we did that and we had it going, and then uh the boomers felt threatened is the only way I can kind of put that, is like they realized that we had some energy and some excitement and we were trying to make church a place that would like meet our needs and the needs of people like us, and they didn't feel like that was going to meet their needs. But before they fully let go of power, I mean, this is just our country, isn't it?
Yeah.
Before they fully let go of power, they just decide to fuck everything up. And like, if I can't have it, nobody can kind of bullshit. And everybody pieced out. We're like, we're not gonna stick around and just watch you bring this place down. And
Right.
it had so much potential and it was so close. And between the boomer elders and the Gen X pastor, just nobody wanted to like actually leave space for us millennials. I'm just barely on the cusp. Some people think I'm 80, so I'm like, what is it? Greg always geriatric millennial.
Elder millennial, yeah.
So,
That's the Gen Z term, I think, is elder millennial.
which is fine. I don't care.
I prefer the, what is it? The Oregon Trail generation.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
I read an article about that a long time ago.
Yeah. We weren't raised in a digital world, but we came of age in a digital world.
Right.
And so we understand both.
Going back to church, the difference between the church that you're describing and the church that I think I found is, at least I don't think that the older members of the church would respond that way. It seems that everybody's very excited about and sort of centers their attention and activities around the younger members of the community. So I think there's space there. But the struggle that I have is, having been in ministry for almost 20 years, like I'm thinking through all the stuff that we're talking about and thinking through like the logic of, well, here's what I do if I was the pastor. And the thing is, like, that's somebody else's job. Like I'm not the pastor, and I empathize with the pastor and I understand what she's trying to do. I understand the burden, that she bears of trying to consistently gather people, and grow that demographic and stuff like that. But so I struggle with, like, part of me says, I could jump in there and I could start doing that. But then part of me is like, no, that's not my job. Like, that's not where I'm at right now. If it evolves into something like that, that's one thing. But like, I'm not trying to get plugged into full-time ministry at this place right now. I'm trying to find a place where I can be a normal human being and still navigate the trauma that we've experienced as a family. That's the whole point, is trying to find a place where we feel like we have a support network for our family again. Not for me to immediately go into, ministry mode and leave my family behind.
Mm-hmm. It's probably good for you to like be a member of the congregation again for just a bit, like you don't need to be in charge. You don't need to be pushing buttons or doing things. Like, go sit in the pews.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's still hard to do. Like, I was not arguing with the pastor today during her sermon, but I was a lot of yes-anding to her sermon.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I get that.
I was happy to be engaged mentally, because over the last couple of weeks, I was asking myself, how long are the sermons? Because I can't recall like the content that we're covering. I can hardly recall the passages that they're reading. But then today I was like fully mentally engaged because I was,
Yeah. I have to I crochet while we're in church. because it keeps me just engaged enough that I can like listen and be there and experience, but I'm not like it keeps my mind busy enough that I'm not critiquing everything. We went last Sunday and today, so 2 weeks in a row for me, which is I don't know the last time that happened, honestly. It's
Yeah.
been a while.
Yeah.
But
I need to do something. Maybe I'll start crocheting as well.
it's
Because
great.
it's hard, especially when they're singing songs. That's what the music is what triggers me the most. Because I'm like, has anybody listened to these lyrics?
Yeah.
Has anybody read these out loud?
I don't sing most of the songs right now. I like singing. It's helpful that the church that we're going to doesn't sing a lot of songs that I'm familiar with. But even today, like there was, a line, Lord God Almighty. I stopped singing after God. It's just like, I'm not singing lyrics I don't believe.
Right.
And also, but it takes me so long to like, I just end up reading the lyrics and thinking, do I believe in this? And then if I'm like, okay, this is fine, I can sing this, then the next time they come around, I'll sing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard for me to like do all that work in real time, and I just don't. I don't want to sing something I don't believe. I mean, today I didn't even pray the Lord's Prayer. I also have never liked praying out loud. I think there's kind of some latent evangelical in there of like prepared, like read prayers and praying a lot of praying aloud, especially like in unison stuff. I've never enjoyed it.
I've kind of come around on prayer since our friend's father passed away. In that time that he asked us, if you pray, consider praying for my father. And that was like, it wasn't a trigger, but it really made me think because I care about him so much. It really made me think harder about what is it that I'm doing. And I was finally able to articulate something for myself that was really helpful. And I think, I mean, of course, you'd have to teach why this is so, and that goes back into the theology. Like that's deeper theology. The God Almighty, what that suggests about their theology. If you're singing God Almighty, and the same thing about prayer. Like if you're going to teach this way that I think of prayer now, you have to get into the theology of why it's this way instead of the way that you've been thinking all your life. And that way that I think it is now for me is that the prayer is like tuning in to something outside of myself that's going on. Prayer is this act of solidarity with another person. And sometimes it's a person who is in pain or in need. And sometimes it's just the people around you who are voicing concern or expressing something, lament or celebration or something like that. But you're extending beyond yourself and connecting with other people. That's the point of prayer, not to ask God for something that you want because he's a genie that grants your wishes, or demonstration of your goodness so that you can reliably ask for something that you need because you're good enough, or deferral to God for something that you need because he's good enough. Like just all of the things that are embedded in the ways that we were taught to pray. And it's just been so much easier to think of prayer as an act of solidarity and something that transports me beyond myself and connects me to something bigger without it having to be performative.
Yeah. In high school, I was taught that this is Christian Missionary Alliance Church. It's taught ACTS, ACTS, was this mechanism, the order for a good prayer that God would hear. It was adoration, confession, thanksgiving, and at the very end, after you've done all of that, blown all the smoke up Jesus's butt, you can ask for something. I've prayed that way for a long, long time.
I think I learned a version of that, a Nazarene version of that used the Lord's Prayer as the framework for pretty much the same thing.
Oh, sure.
Jesus taught us to pray like this because here's the formula.
Exactly.
We're confessing that we're not worthy. We're confessing that only God has the resources to do this. And we're we're aligning ourselves and yada yada yada.
Yeah. And I think that like that type of formulaic prayer, and maybe that's part of what I don't like about like read prayers in church, READ, like read aloud pre-prepared and then just read off the page, or any type of a formulaic thing, which would, I guess, include the Lord's Prayer to some extent, is like it ends up being taught in such a way where it's like, if you do this, that like God will answer. But then it's like, okay, who has the power here then?
Right.
Right? If God is all powerful, but he can be swayed, excuse me, if God is all powerful, but he can be swayed by me praying in this particular fashion, right? Then what are we doing here? But my
That's the thing,
relationship
though.
with
You got to
intercessory
say it
prayer,
right. You got to do it the
yeah,
right way, or else
yeah,
the board up in heaven isn't going to light up. He's not going to know that
exactly.
you care.
He's not going to know.
Otherwise, he doesn't give a shit.
No.
Joey said the combination of words. I gotta
Probably
key
check
in and listen now.
Now, okay, somebody tell me what's going on down there,
Right.
so I can actually show up now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, what was I gonna say? So I like the Lord's Prayer, especially now that I'm trying to think of where I saw it, but recently engaging with the historical um, historical translations of the words. We transposed the relationship between heaven and earth. And when the Lord's Prayer was translated into Greek, we transposed heaven and earth. When Jesus prayed the prayer, it was basically, the translation is as above, so below, basically. As in heaven, so on earth. And the key point is, like, when you transpose and we say on earth as it is in heaven, you're making earth the starting point. But the whole point of the original thought is that heaven is the starting point. They've got everything figured out there. They've got all their shit together there. So what we want is that blueprint for here, not some convoluted, basically Christian nationalist idea.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. When you subvert the actual prayer and you pray it like we've been taught to pray, on earth as it is in heaven, you miss the point. You're thinking that on earth is where, God's kingdom is coming to rest, and you've got these ideas of, theocracy. Instead of training yourself to understand that the way that God intended for things to be, the way that they are with God, that the idea of paradise, like that takes tweaking on our end. We've got to figure out some shit and apply it here. And that's where our conversation is going. I wanted to talk about kind of how backwards everything is right now because of what's been happening.
Weird.
Let's talk about Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, hey.
There it is.
Here's my hot take on this whole week that it's been. Hasn't even been a week yet.
No, it hasn't. And that's crazy.
I refuse to call it an assassination. It was
Why?
A school shooting. It was a school shooting. An assassination gives him a level of clout that I don't think he deserves. He was a blowhard talking at I'm gonna get fucking shot. Talking at a school. And it, like, the level of planning that went into it is no different than any other school shooting that we've seen. It was a school shooting.
Yeah, I feel that, but I would add, it was a single target. It was not.
Sure.
It was not a mass shooting.
Yeah, I guess. Assassination just feels like he doesn't belong on the level of JFK and MLK.
Well, I mean,
right?
Like, I was a little distraught that simply for the fact that he is known by the president, he gets a flag flown at half-mast. But that's after they had a military style funeral for a podcaster. So, like, they're already screwing with, like, they're already making value statements that put the military out in an awkward position. So Like that was that. I don't know. I kind of agree. It's not necessarily on that level. However, I was not overwhelmed because I knew this, but digging back into his content and understanding the scope of his organizational reach, it's insane. Turning Point has international influence. It's just
Yeah.
insane. But here's what I want to say to frame this. I want to talk about something Dr. Jamar Tisby said. He was discussing the God of the oppressed, but before he got into that discussion, he had some very, very poignant things to say about Charlie Kirk. I'm going to borrow from him because what I want to say is that there are two things that are absolutely true about this situation. And that is that he said deplorable things and he made a national platform out of it. I mean, just despicable things. This is the guy who said, you got to wonder if a black pilot is qualified. This is the guy that said that shooting deaths are necessary to maintain our Second Amendment rights. This is a guy that said that black women don't have the capacity for the kind of jobs that they hold, and that basically DEI is just robbing jobs from white men. He said deplorable things and had a national platform that revolved around that kind of ideology. That's absolutely true. And all these people that are getting upset, they're feeling a lot of really big feelings about when people bring out quotes. And I saw a tweet, I can't remember who it was from, so I apologize that I can't attribute it properly, but he said, all I did was quote Charlie Kirk, and now I'm receiving like death threats and people saying, you can't speak evil of the dead like that. If you recognize his own words as being evil, maybe you should take into account why you feel so compelled to follow and lionize and support a person like that. Maybe I'm not the problem, is what he basically said. Because there are a lot of people getting upset when, let's just say, liberals are using direct quotes. Like he said this, or sharing videos. Like it's on tape. So that's absolutely true. He said and did deplorable things. But the other thing that's absolutely true is that he should not have been killed. The manner in which he died was not okay. It's not okay. And it doesn't matter who did it. Conspiracy theories noted. Yep. It doesn't matter how it happened. It's not okay. As much as I want to sucker punch a Nazi, and this is the part of our conversation off script that I want to bring into this conversation. If we are truly pacifist, and if we are truly attempting to maintain a consistent Jesus ethic, then we have to condemn both the ways in which Kirk spoke and behaved, and also the manner in which he died. Mm-hmm. We have to do both. The consistent Jesus ethic says that violence is not okay. So that's how I want to frame our discussion. But Dr. Jamar Tisby had some really cool things to say. And if you're not familiar with him, check him out on Substack.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Check out Jamar Tisby.
Check him out on Substack.
He has a podcast too.
Yeah, he does. I watched an episode, and that's the best church I've ever had, ever, period. Yeah. I feel like I went to church. And he was, it resonated deep in my soul. And especially when he's talking about consistent Jesus ethic. Like I have trouble calling myself a Christian, but people like Dr. Tisby make me hope and make me want to claim that again for myself, because that's what I'm talking about. The things that he said, that's what I'm talking about.
You brought up three things there that I think are all kind of relating back to kind of some of my Marco Polo rants to you this last week. The twofold aspect of Kirk, in that we need to condemn both what he said and how he was killed, that he was killed at all. Those two things, I left under that word condemned, and then it came up again with what you just said, and I lost it.
About a consistent ethic, or
yes, yeah. Because I think the other thing that I have seen a lot in the media coverage of this whole situation, this whole week, because it's not it's not just Kirk, right? It's also the shooting in Colorado.
Right.
And it's also the Minnesota politicians, right? It's a part of a bigger conversation. And what I've seen a lot from the left, which I'm firmly planted on the left, is like this calling out of hypocrisy of like, you care when it's Kirk, but you didn't care when it was these kids. You care when it's Kirk. You don't care when it was the Minnesota lawmakers.
Right.
You can't like very.
That's what really got me about the flag at half mast. I was like,
yeah.
fuck a school shooting. Who cares about that?
Yeah. Here in Washington,
but my friend died
in recognition of all victims of political violence, including the Minnesotan politicians. Yeah. Our governor actually was like, yeah, we're going to go to half mast because this is a bigger problem, right?
I wish more places would do half mast and maybe an inverted flag.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Things are bad.
Our pride flag and our Cascadia flag are still full mast out front. So yeah, that's a whole different conversation. But so those three things: condemning his rhetoric, condemning his murder, and hypocrisy. All of those things are things that I absolutely agree need to be condemned, and they need to be condemned intentionally. But here's what I think I'm seeing missing. So we're in this text thread, the guys, and some of the guys in that text thread lost their ever-loving shit for a couple days there, going down conspiracy theory rabbit holes and all sorts of stuff. And I was very intentionally like, I do not want to be in this right now, but what I see missing in a lot of these conversations is this needs to be condemned. It needs to be condemned by me looking at a camera and saying, I condemn this action, yada, yada, right? My hot take. And I think what I was trying to kind of process with you via our Marco Polos is like, I do want to condemn all three of those things, but I don't feel like the best way, at least for me, to do it is to be getting on social media and posting, right? Even in this space, like I'm not necessarily all that like interested in, like I said, looking into the camera and saying those three things, I condemn them. I'm more interested in like, what am I gonna do with my life that is the counter narrative to this?
Right.
I saw one take that I loved that was like, and said, I did not want Charlie Kirk to be murdered. I wanted him to be able to grow old in a world that accepts everyone that he rejects, and in a world that loves everyone that he hates, and in a world that is a constant and powerful condemnation of his worldview. I want him to grow old in a country that is led by a lesbian president.
Right.
Right? Like, that wasn't exactly what the person said, but that's kind of where I'm leaning on this stuff is like, I'm kind of tired of, hot take activism which is funny because I started this whole part of our conversation by saying hot take. But I'm kind of tired of that kind of style of things, and I think a lot of people are. And what I've really been trying to do with this week, instead of getting afraid and going and completely flush my values down the toilet and buy a gun so I can protect my family from the right-wing crazies that are coming at me for flying a pride flag, right? I don't want to buy a gun. I don't want to let them make me into the person I know I don't want to be.
Right.
Right? The person they want me to be. They want me to be afraid. They want one more gun sale. They want me to think that owning a gun is the solution to this fear that they are stoking in me.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be afraid, and I don't want to have my family be afraid, and I don't want to have my friends be afraid. And if we let them make us afraid, we lose. They win.
And not just that, riled up.
Yeah.
We could be riled up. We could be aggressive. We could return violence for violence.
Yeah. Even if it's not physical violence, even if
Right,
it's not gun violence, we can
right,
return dehumanization for dehumanization.
right. Yeah, that that touches on. I mean, Tisby was all over this, but a couple of things that he said. As far as the hypocrisy, he was very clear that on both the right, it's not. So he says later on when he's talking about the God of oppression, he clarifies that God takes sides. God is not neutral. He takes the side of the oppressed in situations where people are being oppressed. There's not both sides. We have this tendency to talk about things on both sides of but when we're talking about oppression, there is not a both sides. There is a side that has power, that is using that power to work against and to oppress somebody with less power. We'll talk more on that later. But as far as the hypocrisy, what he said was that people on the right and the left are opposing the Jesus ethic in different ways. And he talked about on the right, they're lionizing Kirk and the vile things that he said as if they were Christian, laudable, admirable. But those things are inconsistent with the Jesus who announced his public ministry in Luke 4 by unrolling the scroll of Isaiah and claiming that he came to set the oppressed free. So like when you see things like what one of my family members posted, a picture of Kirk and it says, well done, good and faithful servant. He was in direct opposition to the Christ who announced his ministry by saying, I've come to set the captives free. I've come to feed the hungry. I've come to clothe the poor and to bear witness to the righteousness and the mercy of God. But then the left is claiming that any kind of empathy for Kirk is questionable, which is also inconsistent with a Jesus nonviolent ethic. So Jesus's nonviolence included people whose ideologies we oppose. He's in the garden praying, and they're getting ready to come and arrest him on false charges. And Peter pulls out his sword and cuts off the ear of one of the servants of the people who came to arrest Jesus. And he immediately picks up the ear, puts it back on the guy, and tells Peter, put away your sword, man. Live by the sword, die by the sword. So not even to save his own life did Jesus ever think that it was appropriate to return violence with violence, not even to save his own life. And so the people who are claiming that any kind of empathy is questionable, they're denying the Jesus ethic as well.
Well, and I think that's kind of what I was saying. I'm sure Dr. Tisby put it way better, but like I think that's why I was having such a hard time with what was going on in our group thread, because I don't want to become that. If I can get to the point where I can say I don't have empathy for him or his family, like that makes me as bad as I think they are. It also, I don't, and I'm super aware of this as I'm even talking here, like I think there's a really helpful critique that anytime we're talking about stuff like this, if it is us and them, we have a problem.
Right. You're tiptoeing. I mean, you're wading into. He said such good things. We talk about when we talk about
read his thing. Maybe pause this podcast. Go read Dr. Tisby's thing, and then come back and listen to me, who has not read it. Try to say something even a fraction as eloquent.
No, all props to him. This is his work. He should be supported. You should support him. But this was the framework that I wanted to work with because honestly, it was so good.
His book, like, have you read The Color of Compromise? I read it during, BLM's like heyday. We'll say early BLM. I read it, and it was all about the church's complicity in the race dynamics of our country. It's fantastic, but like as a history, and it like you could read it and you would see echoes of what we're experiencing here with Kirk and with other stuff, right? Like the church has been a major player in the cultural development of this country. And so to ignore the ways that the church has not allowed, but more often enabled and equipped this kind of rhetoric, just not just the rhetoric, but I mean it's a significant moral failure.
Right.
Um,
And
that's happened on the church's watch.
he touches on that. I mean, the systems are working exactly as they are designed to work. And that's something like that takes me back to something that I wanted to share in the podcast that didn't get published. And that was the conversation that we had in Salon about the church functioning exactly as it is designed to function. One of our friends had some very emotional but very salient things to say about that. And I agreed wholeheartedly with what he was saying. I do believe that the system is functioning the way that it was designed to function. I do believe that the church has mostly failed. But being a theology nerd, I also think of monastics and mystics and the people who retreated from the culturally dominant objective of the organized religion and who withdrew from public space to preserve what was good and right and holy about
Mhm.
the things that the faith was supposedly built on. But that made me feel like the odd man out because we were all kind of shitting on the church and talking about how bad things are and how bad they are designed to be. And I thought, of all the people in this group, I would not consider myself the advocate for Christianity. I don't know. I didn't feel like it was necessary to share my thoughts and like extend the conversation beyond what we had talked about in that moment,
Mhm.
especially because I believed that the points were salient and they should stand on their own, but I left that night feeling strangely, I guess I would say this just kind of heartbroken. Like I felt heartbroken over the reality that we acknowledged there and that we all
Mhm.
had experience that could affirm what we were acknowledging, that organized religion sucks and that Christians are terrible people sometimes.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what I felt was just the heartbreak.
Yeah.
And realizing that I am still invested in wanting Christians to be better and wanting the
Mhm.
church to be better. Because whether he existed or not, the idea of a person who would come and live the way Christ lived and taught the things that he taught, I feel about that story the same way that I feel about like Superman, Batman,
Yeah.
and all of these stories that are integrated into my life and my value system that make me come alive with hope and with this idea that we can ascend to this identity that is ideal. Whether it's true or not, that story means a lot. Guys like Patterson say it different way, but on the days when I feel like affirming the mythopoetic structure of Christianity, like that's why, because that story means everything,
Mhm.
So anyway,
I just uh, one thing you just said made me think of this, and I'm not sure exactly what, but I just finished Jeff Chew's new book, Good Soil,
hmm.
and it's an interesting read because it's got references to Rachel Held Evans peppered in because they
Oh
were
yeah,
close friends before her passing, and it kind of follows the time. It's a bit memoir based, before and after 2018 Evolving Faith Conference that Deanna and I went to. That was, I think it was the first one. Yeah, it was the first Evolving Faith, and it was Rachel Held Evans and Sarah Bessie and Jeff too. And then we couldn't go to 2019. Some shit was happening in our own personal lives. And then um, I'm pretty sure Rachel died between 18 and 19. All that to say, thing to Jeff, like process some of that in his book, but also like it kind of it follows his time on the farminary,
hmm.
and
Which, if people don't know, is Princeton, right? Princeton
I think
Theological
Prince, that
Seminaries
sounds right.
has an on-campus, like several, I think it's tens of acres of a farm that they actually work on and cultivate as part of regenerative spirituality, taking care of the earth. Yeah.
It's part
Sorry.
of a theology focus there, but they're doing it through. So he has these great, even brought it to, he references in the book this experience where he was preaching at Evolving Faith and had us, because I was there, I did this. It's in the book and I did it. Had us write down a hope on one piece of paper and a fear on another piece of paper. And he, in the midst of a sermon, said, "You keep your hopes and carry those home with you. I'm going to take your fears back to the farminary and mix them into the compost heap where they will be able to become a part of new life." Beautiful metaphor. I probably cried.
I love it.
It was gorgeous, and I got to see it. And then he talked about it in the book. Read the book if you want to hear about it again. But overall, like this book is full of heartbreak and him still figuring out how to find beauty in that heartbreak. And if that isn't exactly where I find myself right now, I don't know what is. Like, I'm at a spot where this world is breaking my heart. This country is breaking my heart. The church is breaking my heart. And in the midst of that, as we've talked about in our group multiple times, I feel like I am in the best place I've ever been. My heart is constantly broken. I am constantly wondering if I'm screwing all this up, if I'm handling any of this correctly. All of those same fears and concerns that I think a lot of people are having right now. And also, I'm trying, like the Dickens, to find beauty and to get out there and connect, right? To find people. And we were talking before we started recording, we just had a progressive dinner with the neighbors on either side of us last night. And we don't know them very well. We just moved in here, but it was just this way of us. And we started that. It was Deanna and I that suggested it to everybody. And they're, yeah, absolutely. But we're just trying to find ways to bring more beauty into this world. And I think, back to what I was saying before, that is how I condemn the rhetoric of Kirk, condemn the murder of Kirk, and condemn the hypocrisy of the world that says you are alone. All you're ever going to be is alone. You're an individual and you are the only thing that matters. I condemn that as well because we matter. We as a collective, and fear pushes us apart and pushes wedges in between us. And I'm fighting to condemn that with words or Facebook posts, but with actual practical, what are we doing? We're having dinner. I'm cooking sourdough and I send a loaf. We ate 2 loaves last night at our progressive dinner, and I sent a 3rd loaf to the women's prison with my wife tonight. Like, that's what we're doing. I'm sending good bread with my wife to prison so that those individuals can experience something homemade when they take communion every week.
That's beautiful and powerful. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King in particular, after he died, expanded on this idea of the world house. So the Kings had an expression, Martin Luther King had an expression about beloved community, which was about working through our disagreements and conflicts nonviolently, respecting the dignity of the human person, because we're all part of the same household. So when you're talking about the condemnation of the opposition to the idea that we are individuals and that's all that matters is how we experience the world individually. That's not at all what the ethic of Jesus was. That's not at all what the biblical story was. The biblical story in what Jesus taught was about a communal ethic. It was about us being part of the same household. King expanded on that. She talked about the world house and us all of us on planet Earth being part of the same household, and therefore our concern for one another should extend globally because we're interconnected. So Martin Luther King said we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. And before that is when he said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, which is the part of the quote that most people recognize.
Yeah.
But that idea, that inescapable network of mutuality, I love those words. And that quote
Yeah.
is on my cubicle at work, because what I do at a university is about that. It's about our inescapable network of mutuality. The other thing that Tisby talked about in light of that was when he's reflecting on, we can talk about Gaza and the genocide there, which I also condemn and want people to be more vocal, want Christians especially to be more vocal in objecting to the complicity of the United States in the genocide that is happening in Gaza. But amazing thinkers like Malcolm X and who else? Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, MLK, the SNCC, Nelson Mandela, Stokely Carmichael, who popularized the phrase Black Power, Angela White Davis, like they expanded their consciousness of what was going on in the world. It wasn't just about reading headlines, but they actually went beyond their local experience, and they met people, and they heard the poetry, and they heard the cries, and they heard the prayers of people. This has been going on in the Middle East since the 60s. The United States has been complicit in replacing people with other people who fit our narrative and who work towards our goals. But since the 60s, and when Tisby was evaluating what about those people was characteristic of their activism, it wasn't just that they were aware of what was going on in the world, but it was that they had a local activism as well. They were embedded in certain places in the world, in their homes, and that's where they were building community. That's where they were doing
Absolutely.
things on a daily basis that made a difference. That were in an effort to build a world that condemns the things that that the people that they opposed were supporting. Like you said, I want Charlie Kirk. I want there's so many people that we could name, but Franklin Graham and Lindsey Graham, frankly. But
why you don't have to choose a Graham. They all need to.
all the Grahams. I want all the
Grahams
Grahams to live in a world that accepts the people that they reject. I love the way you said that so beautifully.
Oh, that was somebody else. I wish I could credit them.
That accepts the people that they reject, that loves the things that they deny.
Well, I think you and I have talked about this before. Maybe we talked about it on the last episode. Like the evangelical church told me that to have the impact on the world that Jesus wanted me to have, I had to do the biggest, best thing for the most amount of people. I think the temptation would be to see the Charlie Kirks of the world. There are others that are similar, right? To see the Charlie Kirks of the world and say, oh, someone, or maybe even take that on as myself and be like, I need to have as big a platform saying the opposite things and, shouting down his hate and all of that. And that's what evangelicalism told me. That's what America told me. Honestly, the Venn diagram is nearly a circle, right? Between them, in terms of like the motive and the perspective and the way that they pursue their goals. But that was what they told me was I needed to be bigger and better and stronger and louder and more successful with a bigger platform. And I reject all of that. I'm trying to become a teacher so that I can, in my one little space here, 30 students per period at a time, help to build the world that I want to see happen. I saw a Pod Save America episode a while back. It was before all this stuff, months ago. And they said, like, it all feels so overwhelming. How do you even address all of this? Gaza, school shootings, near hourly atrocities being visited upon us by the current administration, right? How do you even start to address all of that? And they said, whatever it is you're doing now, do the next level up.
Right.
If you haven't ever registered to vote, you register to vote. This is them politically. but I'm using this as an analogy, right? Like, you haven't registered to vote, register to vote. If you're voting, maybe it's time to send a little money to a campaign, right? If you can't send a little money, maybe you join a text bank or a phone bank. If you're already phone banking and they're, like they're working their way up, they're just saying, do the next thing up. One of my big things right now is like, if you haven't attended a school board meeting, attend your school board meeting.
Right.
If you go and you can see what's going on there, next time go and sign up for public comment. I spent the last 2 years going to our school board meetings, signing up for public comment and using my 3 minutes to thank the teachers in the midst of everyone else using their 3 minutes to talk about what's going wrong.
Right.
I just spent my 3 minutes talking about what I saw that was going right. My kids sent me teachers who were doing well, and I just read them to the school board. And their friends started sending me things. And then I just read that to the school board. And yes, once I did show up and address, but that's a different conversation. But that was me doing the next thing up. And I've been going to the school board meetings for 2 years, and doggone it, now I'm going to be a teacher like an idiot. I have a perfectly good job. And here I am. I'm on the teacher side of TikTok right now, and it is rough, man. It's beautiful, it's amazing, but it definitely doesn't make it's not selling the profession, we'll say it that way. But
right.
But like that's not what I'm getting. That's not why I'm doing it. It's just the next step. It's the next thing I can do right here, right now, to condemn those other things. I'm not saying that people shouldn't be saying that what's going on in Gaza is wrong. It absolutely is. And people need to be saying it. That said, no one's going to listen to them if they don't have a history teacher telling them why Gaza is a thing in the first place. No one's going to listen if they don't have parents who are there listening to their kid, to the little stuff that they're dealing with that feels very big. So every little thing we do to make this world a little more beautiful is a condemnation, and it better equips everyone in this world to have that empathy, to see when something's not how it should be, because they've had such an example of what it should look like. It's
Right.
bank tellers. Bank tellers are not trained on what counterfeit money looks like. They aren't handed a stack of counterfeit bills and said, feel these. This is what counterfeit bills feel like. They get handed stacks and stacks and stacks of real money so that they know what it feels like. So that when they get to the false one, the fake one, they just know, oh, that's not right. And that's what we got to do. We've got to be the hundreds of little interactions where every person we interact with can say, oh, that's what that should be like. That's what that feels like. Yep, that's real. That's what that should be like. So that when they run across Charlie Kirk, when they're swiping through their algorithm, they say, that's not right. That doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like what it's supposed to feel like.
The way that we do that, to tie that in with a discussion on oppression, the way that we do that is through empathy. And empathy is built on our experience of pain and suffering. So our experience with oppression, pain, it creates pattern recognition. As we talked about pattern recognition in terms of oppression, he's talking about the Black community and why they can recognize oppression in other situations because they have experienced oppression. They continue to experience oppression. But I would expand that to include suffering. Our experience of suffering allows us to be empathetic with another person. And it should create a pattern recognition so that when we see the devaluing of another person, we can recognize it. We can recognize that it's not right. And so we build up muscles both ways, in being able to sit with suffering and sit with the things that we've talked about in our context, recognizing heartbreak, sitting with that, doing the emotional work and navigating through trauma and things like that. All of that helps with the pattern recognition. But what you're saying helps with the pattern recognition as well. The good things that we participate in, that we celebrate and that we acknowledge and recognize, that creates a pattern recognition as well. And to go back to working for justice in our own context, that was step one of the lessons that we learned from the Black leaders who were advocating for Palestinians. Not only did they work for justice in their own context, they developed that concept of the world house and being responsible for our neighbors, recognizing the interconnectedness of everybody around us. But I love this phrase that he used when he talked about the third thing is embodied relational learning. So we have to have a deep curiosity for and empathy for humanity, for our neighbors, for the people that are right next door to us, that we see on the street, that we see at work. We can read books and articles, but more importantly, we have to take a journey. And that journey has to take us outside of our own little world, outside of our own house, outside of our own habits and framework, so that we can experience other people around us. And what that leads to is the final step, which is to endure the risk of solidarity. It will always be risky because you're standing firm with people in their suffering, in their oppression, and you take that on. It becomes your suffering. It becomes your responsibility. It becomes your experience when you empathize with another person. We have to recognize that we may not be able to stop the suffering and stop those things that other people are experiencing, but we can make sure that nobody is suffering alone. And that's what it comes down to. And that phrase that you used time and time again as we were discussing this offline, the idea that we can live together or die alone is the whole point. That's the life. That's the hope after doom, the life after doom. We are in this together. And we demonstrate that in palpable ways when we engage with the people around us and we do those things.
It's funny you said Life After Doom because that's McLaren's book, right? I think you're reading now or just recently.
Among other things, yeah.
Yeah, among other things. I read it closer to when it came out. And I believe he flips that. He says essentially of like those who would say, you know, if ecological collapse is coming, then I'm gonna like store up all this food and all this guns and ammo and get my bunker ready so that I can survive.
Right.
And he says, yeah, you can do that. But what he says is I would rather die together than live alone.
Right.
And so it's both. Right? I would rather live together than die alone. I would rather die together than live alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it comes back to the together. And that's, I think, where the challenge has got to be. We have got to find ways to move people from them to us, not like move them like ideologically from Kirk's camp to my camp, but to actually, in our own beings, in our own hearts and minds, find ways to say that that's not a them over there. That's a us. That's a we.
Right.
They are a part of me, as hard as that is to look at.
Which ironically is embedded in the theology that Christianity supposedly, stands for. When you've done this to the least of these, you've done it. Well, I think that we can challenge people ideologically, and we need to. But I think that the way that we do that is by challenging them on the personal level. So one of the things, I can't remember who said it, but recently I was reading something and they talked about how wild is it that your, let's say, mother-in-law or father-in-law feel so strongly about someone like Charlie Kirk to the exclusion of how they would feel about or advocate for you as a person. So like, what have we done wrong? What has the system done wrong that people feel so much solidarity with someone like Kirk at the expense of solidarity with the people in their own family or the people who live next door or the people who are in their community, And so we have this we have this, and I think there's a lot of this is a lot of other conversations that could be had, examining all of the reasons why this framework is created. But like social media is part of it. The sense of anonymity that we have. You're interacting with, I mean, Facebook started off as connecting with friends who were in the same communities, the same schools as you. So these should be people that you know. Social media should have been just an online interaction with real people that you already knew, but has become this alternate universe where you're interacting with somebody that you should know in a way that you feel like you have anonymity and the ability to say and to do things that you normally wouldn't do. You've created this alter ego, this persona that has nothing to do with how you behave in real life. And you've got all of these connections and all of this framework, this neurological framework built up in connections to people and things, ideas that feel real, but that are the opposite. They're not.
Our brains are wired for connecting with people, sitting around a campfire and eating the food that we got together. Like that's biologically what we're wired for. Even that, right? Even that term, the way that has like entered the zeitgeist. Like that's just what we say. It's that community of 150 people, right? That's how many names you can know, basically, right? And after that, you start to forget some names because that's not what our brains were meant for. And I think the closer we can get back to that, and I know that feels very idealistic. I'm super aware of that. And I feel like too much of my anecdotes are, I saw this on TikTok. I wish that wasn't the case. I don't know, maybe a third of them are books and a third of them are podcasts too. I feel like I'm at least a little more balanced. But anyway, I'll stop critiquing myself mid-thought. I saw a creator, it's a Black creator, talking about like the male loneliness epidemic, or just the loneliness epidemic in general. He was like, I don't remember exactly how he was putting it, but basically his idea was that sounds like a white problem to me. Because he was like, we know how to make community, and we know how to rely on each other and how to get together around good food and laughter. And yeah, your crazy uncle's in the corner talking about something, but he's there, and you're there. And I don't do this well. I mean, I'm estranged from most of my family, not entirely over politics, but it certainly isn't helping. It's a lot over how politics has been handled in our family and some fundamentalism around that, but still, I don't know. Like, I'm not doing it great. I'm not doing it perfect, but I'm doing what I can in the spaces that I have available to me. Right. I think that's the way we pull out of this, is like, and I think, a lot of our conversation this last week was you and me both trying to talk each other out of despair. I think that's part of it, is like, how do I not despair? I'm about to send my oldest, who is a member of a population that has been targeted by this administration, about to send them off to college entirely without me. I will not be around to protect them. And that is scary as all get out. Can't do anything about it. It is what it is, right? But in the midst of that, how do we not despair in the midst of all this? We've got to find the ways to like bring a little bit more light into the lives of others and let them bring a little more light into our lives.
There's thinking about the World House again, there's a new song that came out either this year or maybe last year, the year before. Keb Mo, I think, is one of the artists, but it's called Room on the Porch for Everyone. It's going back to that idea of the Black community and understanding what it's like to be in community with each other, to rely on each other, and to be in that shared space together. They tell you to come and help yourself to the food and have a conversation and just sit and relax and be a part of this thing. And I love the imagery of that song. I'll probably share it in Salon maybe one of these days. Yeah. I think it is a white problem. And I think the reason why it is a white problem is because whiteness isn't an actual thing. It is a construct that was created so that that white people could oppress other people. And so
It's
what
not a
we've
culture, it's a lack of culture.
right.
It is a stripping of culture so that
It is
everything that
it's
is
the
culture,
opposite.
it can be pushed away or pushed down. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Which is why it's so hard. And this is part of that conversation that we talk about the difference between standing against something and standing for something.
Hmm.
We lose our identity when we are invested in the framework of whiteness. And so
Yeah.
it becomes harder for us to recognize who we are, where we've come from, what our shared stories are, the shared narratives that make a difference. And one of the things, the reason I bring that up is because one of the things that we've talked about regarding our families is sort of the difference between where I'm at with my dad versus where you're at with your dad. And I came from a large Catholic Italian family, and that was very much the culture. It was everybody together always. Every weekend we were at grandma's house. All of us, my dad's the oldest of 11. We were all there, all the aunts and uncles, all their kids. That's how we grew up. And to a degree, I miss that because that is a cultural framework that I had. And the effort that I make towards my father is a deliberate, like, reframing of that experience, trying to recapture what is good about that experience and making the extra effort to interact with him and to not give up on him and to not walk away and sever ties because I want to try to live into those values that I have. And that was something that we discussed in therapy as well. It's difficult. It's a strained relationship, and I don't overexert myself in terms of trying to make things work, but I can be patient and let him speak. I can be engaged and call. I can be honest about, hey, I was thinking about you. I can be honest about my values and stand for those and set boundaries so that when we have conversations, I can control what I say and how I react to different things. But all of that comes from that value of family that in a lot of ways, for better or worse, experience wise, that was still a part of my growing up, and so trying to reclaim that and reframe that has been a big part of how I try to interact with my family.
Hmm.
But anyway,
Yeah. I'm grateful for your relationship with your dad, that you've been able to find a way to maintain that. Um, as you're speaking, I'm thinking like, what is it that's different about my relationship with my dad that makes that not possible? But that's a whole nother podcast and way more therapy. But that doesn't mean I'm not grateful for yours, right? Like,
yeah,
and I don't want to get sucked into that. Like, maybe that's what I should be doing. Just actually just sit and just feel it. I'm glad. I'm grateful for you, for your experience. That you and your dad to this point have found a way forward. A lot of that's been hard work on your part, um, and I hope that that's a model that we can all kind of move into as we continue to like figure stuff out and, like
yeah,
try to find ways to, in our own hearts and minds, bring more of them into the circle. I don't see another way forward that aligns with who I see Jesus to be and what I see him calling us to, is whether that's actively or just by way of the example that he set. He had some of the worst thems available, people who were actively trying to get him killed constantly. And he still figured out how to make them and us. And at the very end, the them that he uses, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
I think this is a tangent. Maybe it's a whole nother podcast. People tend to overlook or not spend a lot of time on the fact that Jesus chose Judas. And
Mm,
it's kind of explained away and like this, like God had the system all worked out and all the pieces in place, like he was playing a chess game and he knew that this was a necessary evil. But I don't think that that adequately describes the behavior of Jesus. Like he chose this person. He invested in this person. He loved this person the same way that he loved every other disciple. I think this is why I love open relational theology. So, but it was a call. The call was constant from the very beginning. The call was for Judas to enter into a relationship that could transform him as much as he could transform it. And that's what ultimately Judas erred on the side of, exert his influence over the situation and his influence over the person of Jesus. But that was the misunderstanding. That was the fundamental flaw in his thinking that led to his downfall, was this idea that he had some better idea, that he had some better understanding of what should be happening. And that was influenced by, external forces and things like that. But like, instead of partnering with Jesus and envisioning the world the way that Jesus did, he maintained this idea of his own, this framework of his own. Whatever it was based on still conflicted with the idea, the framework that Jesus was showing him. But I think that, that's the heartbreak. That's to be able to feel the heartbreak over that broken relationship, to be able to feel the heartbreak over that failure of Judas to recognize something better. Like, I think that's the beginning of some wisdom, but that's where we're at. Like I said, probably a tangent, but I think of the stories so differently now, and being able to reframe those in the context of a loving God who is absolutely loving, who is always loving, who is constantly wooing us, drawing us towards love, that web of mutuality, that idea, that posture of self-sacrifice, which is, theologically speaking, the cruciform God, the idea of the crucified God. It's about posture. His posture towards reality is one of self-sacrifice. And that impacts everything. That impacts the creation, that impacts the redemption story. And so reframing everything with that as the foundational understanding, it changes so much.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate you bringing that open relational back in, because I think that is that's probably where a lot of this is coming from. Like, that has really resonated with me. Open and relational theology has really resonated with me. And if I look at like my approach to the world right now, and to addressing these huge problems, and condemning these things, but condemning them with my life at least as much as with my words, hopefully more than with my words. I think I want to be open. I think I go the most wrong when I think I can know the future, when I think that I am more powerful than I actually am to influence whatever's going on. If I actually want to be like Jesus, and I believe Jesus is like God, and I believe God is open and relational, then I need to be open to the possibility that something can go different than my worst case scenario. And the only way that I have to influence and affect change is through relationship. So you need to stay open.
Billy Horde, I don't know if you know her name, but with her brother just wrote a book called Contamination. And it talks about essentially that, what relationship looks like when we maintain an open posture and we recognize that there's this cross contamination that happens, but EU being good contamination, like microbacteria in the soil. That's where life happens. This confluence of life. Going back to Brian McLaren, he had a TikTok right before I left TikTok. I saw, which was a perfect way to leave. His was probably one of the last TikToks that I saw, but he said this, and I love this. I'm not going to quote it exactly right now, but I have it written down in other places because it's so beautiful. But he talks about the thing that is dying and the thing that is being born. And the thing that is dying is scared and frustrated and aggressive, and it is going to lash out and it is going to do as much harm as it can as it dies, like a cornered animal. It's just going to destroy as much as it can, take as much as it can with it as it perishes. But something new is being born. And that thing is not as loud and it's not as scary as the other thing, but it's much more important. And it's our attention to that new thing that's being born that helps us to recognize that the void that we feel is both the void of the grave as things are dying, but also the void of the womb where things are being born. And he quotes somebody else, another thinker, that uses that phrase that is so often the void of death is often also the void of the womb.
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking about, is being attentive to the things being born, midwifing that thing. That's what I want to be a part of. Yeah.
Compost that.
Yeah, exactly.
And let it be the fertile soil of the next. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So that's what I want to be a part of. That's what any community that starts to form around this idea, that's what it's got to be about. Not just what we stand against, but what we're looking forward to, what we're building, what we're helping to nurture into existence. And that's got to be a nonviolent, consistent Jesus ethic.
Yeah. I think I've told you this. Like, early in my therapy journey, my dad is a big part of my therapy conversations. And early in my therapy journey, I realized that I have spent most of my life with a negative identity, which was, don't be my dad. And honestly, it served me pretty well, right? It got me a good bit of the way toward not being a complete shit show of a person. But there was a point at which it wasn't enough, that negative identity, it couldn't take me the whole way. I didn't know how to be a good dad. I knew how to not be a bad dad. Mm-hmm. And those two things are different. Right? I didn't know how to be a good husband. I knew how to not be a bad husband. So, and I think that's where we've got to find ourselves. Like there's got to turn the corner at some point from defining ourselves by a negative identity of what we are not, and moving into a space where we have a positive identity. This is who we are and who we are becoming.
Yeah, I think, to use some Christianese language, but it's the difference between the milk and the meat.
Yeah. Yep.
That's where we all start off. And that's where the holiness tradition starts off, is separation. Don't do this. Don't be this. You can't wear these clothes. You can't eat these things. You can't behave this way. But what the arc of the story moves us into, and what Jesus narrates and teaches, is this transition from the deficit to, the complement, the idea of what we take on and what we evolve into.
Good stuff, man. Did we cover it all?
I think so.
All the problems.
I appreciate your time.
Yeah, man. Always
love hanging out with you.
Yeah, this is good. I don't mind at all being a recurring guest. It's pretty fun to just like get on every now and then, think about the things we're already thinking about anyway. Yeah, this is just Marco Polo, but in real time, and we're recording. All right, man. Go get some sleep. It's like midnight or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Pretty close.
All right. Take care.
Talk to you later.
All right. Bye.